Hello, and welcome to the One Mind Dharma podcast. To learn more about us, you can visit oneminddharma.com. You can also visit us on YouTube, TikTok as the Mindful Counselor, and Instagram. And just to shout out the couple things we have going on, we have the meditation challenge back up. It's a 30-day meditation challenge. It's on YouTube, or you can enter your email and it sends you a meditation every day. And it's aimed to help people either who haven't really meditated before or want to dive back into their practice and kind of recommit. The information's at oneminddharma.com/challenge. And then we also have a new year, begin again, a mindful start to the new year, a new year class series in January. It'll be 4 weeks in January, 4 sessions. And we'll investigate kind of this idea of like New Year's intentions, but from a bit of a more Buddhist or mindful perspective. So we'll look at wise intention, the factor on the path, as well as wise effort. And then we'll also spend some time discussing an important piece of the path there, which is balancing our striving or desire to grow with an acceptance and recognition of where we are. So not just getting lost in the intentions or the striving, but to find a mindful and supportive way to do so. That, I don't know if I said the link already, oneminddharma.com/New Year. The other announcement or other thing I have to say is we do have construction going on next door. So I apologize if there's any noise. I tried to pick a time to record where it seemed like they are on their lunch break, but I don't know how long that will last. So please bear with me. All that being said, I wanted to talk today about Sila, or ethics or conduct. And it's funny that I often pick something for a talk, whether it's for this podcast or for one of the kind of private groups I run or whatever it may be, based on either something that's going on with me in my own practice or life. Often I'll kind of have a difficulty or have a moment of awakening around something, and then I'll kind of put it in my notes for a Dharma talk in the future, and then over the next few months I'll kind of jot down notes and thoughts as I'm reading different things, or it's based on something a student said or a conversation I had with a student or in a group. But today this topic comes because I listened to a lot of Dharma talks myself, probably nearly every day. I listened to at least part of a talk, and I noticed that so many of the talks really focus on the meditation portion of the path. And I think that that's great. I think it's great that's where people seem to need support. It's where a lot of my talks are focused on, or the more kind of mindfulness or meditation portion. But there's a whole aspect of the path of conduct and time off the cushion. So the Buddhist practice of ethics or morals or values, ethical conduct, is known as Sila, Sila. And it's actually, there's traditionally 3 trainings of the path, right? There's Sila or ethics, Samadhi or concentration, and Prajna or wisdom or insight. The word itself actually means, it has a relation to the kind of composition or coordination of one's actions. So I really like that translation or that kind of note, that Sila isn't just about a code of ethics. It's about coordinating one's actions. And I'm going to kind of, I'm having a moment where the word just left my brain. I'm going to contradict myself a little bit. I think as lay people, it's not necessarily a set of rigid rules that we need to follow, but more of a suggestion to investigate our conduct. It's a huge part of the path, right? We spend so much of our time not meditating, interacting with other people, and taking action that has consequences. It includes things like looking at our intentions, looking at the way we speak, our actions, our inaction, our livelihood. There's a quote from Jack Kornfield. I think it's in A Path with Heart. I looked really hard for it and I couldn't find it, so it may not be in that book, where he talks about it says something along the lines of it's hard to meditate after a day of stealing and murdering all day. That practicing wise conduct really supports our meditation practice and our well being in general. And in my opinion, we should strive or aim to uh, behave in a way that doesn't cause more suffering to ourselves, doesn't cause more suffering for others, and leaves us without guilt or remorse. I don't know if I put this in my notes, but one of the things that they say you can check in, I'm not sure if I put this in my notes, that you can check in with yourself as far as conduct goes is if you feel guilt or remorse, it's perhaps worth investigating if your conduct was wholesome there. I'll give an example from, it's funny, I wrote this talk like 2 days ago. Today's Friday when I'm recording it. I kind of finished it and polished it, which may be hard to believe given how tangential my talks often can be, on Wednesday. And yesterday I was out surfing with Elizabeth, with my partner and a friend. And there were some other people in the water. And I caught a wave, was riding said wave, and somebody else did what's known as dropping in on me. They kind of dropped in onto the wave in front of me that I was already on, which is like a no-no. It's a little bit of an unkind thing to do, and it can be a little bit dangerous. The waves weren't huge. It wasn't really that dangerous in this case. And the person realized they caught the wave after they realized what had happened. She came up and apologized. It was very lovely. It was no problem. Then she did it again, kind of was getting a little more irritated. And then she did it a third time on like what was the best wave I had seen that day so far. Just like right in front of me. I had to pull off the wave. That one was like a little bit more dangerous. And I screamed, not screamed, but I yelled a profanity, not at her. I didn't say, oh, screw you. I said more something along the lines of, oh, shucks. And I yelled it. I was like frustrated. And I like Elizabeth heard me. I paddled back over to Elizabeth and she said, what was that? Why are you yelling? I said, oh, I just like was venting my frustration because I was annoyed she dropped in on me. And this woman paddled back over to me and apologized, like very honestly, right? Like hey, I'm just learning to surf, and I just haven't like mastered the looking over my shoulder to see if someone's on the wave, and I'm really sorry. And I was like, yeah, I was like, it's I didn't want to explain like it can be dangerous, and yeah, you should do that. I said it's okay, I understand. Like we've all been there, and I apologize for yelling like that. Was not, I know it wasn't like directed at you, but I realized it may have felt that way. And uh, I, I apologize. I was frustrated. She forgave me. We chatted. We caught some more waves. We're in the water together for 2 hours or so. And we chatted a bunch, and she chatted with Elizabeth and my other friends. The point of the story being the the cussing loudly, it is not wise conduct or Sila, but the apologizing after is, right? That is something that I know, not necessarily from experience because I haven't had that same thing happen, but I know somewhere in me through my practice that when I leave the water and I'm driving home and I kind of cussed loudly in that person's direction, even if it wasn't like explicitly directed at them, I know I'm going to feel bad. I'm going to feel some guilt that I should have taken accountability for that and I should apologize and ask forgiveness. And that to me is what Sila is about, is acting in a way that we feel good about, that supports ourselves and supports others, rather than making, quote unquote, an enemy in the water that day. I made a friend. In in Burmese, to my understanding, in Burmese meditation traditions, Theravadan traditions, practitioners are actually instructed to practice ethics and kind of perfect or work towards perfection of ethics before they're even encouraged to meditate or given meditation instructions. And you can see this in many Burmese Buddhist cultures and schools. You can see this in like Mahasi Sayadaw's teachings, where one of my favorite books on Buddhism is the Manual of Insight. And the first time I picked it up, I was like, oh man, the first like 100 pages of this is about ethics. I want to know about meditation. I think I was like 20 when I picked it up. But there's value in that. There's value in really working with our ethics before we meditate. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily true for every single person, but I do think it illustrates the importance of really practicing with ethics. There's a sutta in which the Buddha is speaking with Ananda, and Ananda says, "What, O Venerable One, is the reward and blessing of wholesome morality?" And the Buddha says, "Freedom from remorse, Ananda." And what's the reward and blessing of freedom from remorse? Joy, Ananda, joy. And of joy, rapture. And of rapture, tranquility. And of tranquility, happiness. And of happiness, concentration. And of concentration, vision and knowledge according to reality. And of the vision and knowledge according to reality, turning away and detachment. And of turning away and attachment, the vision and knowledge with regard to awakening, Ananda. The Buddha is illustrating here that morality is part of the path to realization, to awakening. Even just the first couple call and responses or questions and answers are quite interesting. What's the reward of Sila? Remorse, freedom from remorse. And what from freedom of remorse? Joy. That we're actually able to live with more joy when we're not consumed by guilt or remorse. When it's not taking up mental or physical or emotional or psychological or spiritual space. The Buddha also talks about true morality being practicing in a way that is for the benefit of both ourselves and others. And I think that's an important part, that Sila or ethics aren't just about protecting. I think so much of it so many talks or so many pieces that I read were focused on it's taking care of others and the community, and absolutely. But it also takes care of ourselves. It also supports our own practice. So Sila is one of the paramitas or paramis, the perfections. Included in this kind of code of ethics is to avoid harming others and be virtuous, to choose nonviolence, compassion, mindfulness, to have wise intention, and to be kind and support the well-being of ourselves and others. In the monastic community in the Vinaya, they have 227 rules for the men, the monks, and 311 for the nuns, which probably could be its own episode of the way women are treated in Buddhism. Many kind of first-time monks or novice monks will take on the 10 precepts. Sometimes on retreat, we'll take on the 8 precepts. And lay people are encouraged to take on the 5 precepts. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I think I probably covered the 5 precepts. There's a page on One Mind Dharma about it. But the 5 precepts are 5 training rules that we're to undertake as a way to protect ourselves and the community, and as a way to practice ethics or Sila. The 5 precepts, put kind of simply, are 1, to abstain from taking life. 2, to take only that which is freely given. 3, to speak truthfully, wisely, kindly, and timely. 4, to use our sexual energy wisely, not cause harm with our sexuality. And 5, not to cloud the mind with intoxicants. So I'll talk about these just really quickly, but it's not what I want to focus on. The abstain from killing is obviously not killing. Like, don't go out and kill someone, I think is a pretty basic rule or training rule. But we can also think of it as not causing harm, right? Like, killing is kind of the extreme end of causing harm in a sense. So doing what we can to not cause harm. For many people, many Buddhist practitioners, this means eating a vegetarian or vegan diet. For others, it might mean saying some sort of blessing before eating anything, meat or plants. I don't know if blessing is the right word, but some sort of thanks to the animal that gave its life so you can eat. I remember when I first met Elizabeth, she had gone to the meditation center where I went at the time, Against the Stream in LA. And I really, this is her story, but I'm going to tell it. She went, it was before I'd met her, and a teacher there was talking about the precepts or something. And she asked, what about like if there's a cockroach in my apartment? And like, I don't want it in there. Like, I kill it. And the teacher who's a lovely teacher, but is a little bit on the more blunt side, said, that's ignorant. And they meant in the like Buddhist contents of ignorance or delusion. But when you're new to the path, that's a little bit of a harsh thing to hear. And so she didn't go back for like a year. But the point stands that like we live like right backed up to like a rainforest, to a jungle here in Mexico where we live. And we get all kinds of crazy things that come into our house that I'm not used to growing up in California. So we'll get snakes that come inside every once in a while. We have scorpions that come inside, vinegaroons. And we've been here, 7 or 8 years now. So I've learned to like, I just pick up the scorpions by their tail and throw them outside. There's no reason for me to kill them. And the truth is that I did kill a scorpion about almost exactly a month ago now. I was at my son's birthday, and I changed to put on a bathing suit, and I felt like something kind of like went to go scratch something, and it stung me. It was a scorpion, not like a super dangerous one, but it hurt. And I like had grabbed onto my hand, and I just like instinctively threw it to the ground and stepped on it. And I felt horrible. I felt like absolutely horrible, guilty and remorse. And it was a reaction. And I tried not to beat myself up. But I think the first thing, Elizabeth was like, what was that? And I was like, oh, I killed it. And she's like, what was it? I was like, I feel so bad. I killed it. She's like, what was it? So I think these are things we can investigate, right? With our ethics of like, how does it feel to, instead of killing something or instead of harming something, to remove it. The second one is stealing or taking, kind of related to generosity. Like the line is to not take that which is not freely given. So obviously not stealing things. Stealing goes against this rule. But I also think that we can take that which is not freely given in terms of space or time or energy. I've had this conversation with students in groups, and it's an uncomfortable conversation. But sometimes we'll have someone who takes up a lot of space or time during the groups, and I have to, not in front of everyone, pull them aside and discuss this kind of idea of being generous with our time and energy to allow space for others. The third is wise speech, which again could and should be a podcast episode of its own. I definitely have a post on the Mindful Counselor recently about wise speech. But generally speaking, in a way that is conducive to the well-being or awakening of others, that doesn't cause too much suffering. And there's some complexities there, right? Like sometimes we need to be honest and the truth is going to cause a little bit of harm to someone. We can think of wise speech as speaking the truth, speaking in a timely manner, so knowing when to say something. I work with a few with couples, and that's one of the things that we seem to have to work on with quite a few couples working to be more mindful in their relationships is when your partner, I don't know, comes home from work or has just spent all day doing something with the kids or whatever it is, it's not the best time to have a difficult conversation, right? They're tired. They're maybe not fully present. So using our speech, like our actions, in a way that's conducive to well-being. Sexual energy and this precept is actually on my list of podcast topics because I think it's something we don't talk about. There are, of course, a lot of people who aren't sexually active, and a lot of people with a lot of difficulties and trauma surrounding sexual energy. So it can be a delicate topic. And then, of course, there's the whole piece of the stigma around sex and talking about it. But for the most part, it's something that's a part of many of our lives, even if we're not engaging with a partner. So this precept is to not cause harm with our sexuality, to ourselves or to others. I think there's really obvious ones here, like to only engage in sexual activities with consenting adults, to, this is such a vague way to put it, but to engage in sex for honest reasons. And I'm not sitting here telling you that if you're not looking for something serious and you want to date different people and go out with different people, that that's bad or wrong at all. But to be honest with yourself about the intention and to be honest with the other person. So we'll cover that in a future episode, but to not cause harm with our sexuality. And then the fifth one, which I get a lot of questions about, if I'm being honest. It's so many questions to One Mind Dharma about like cannabis use specifically and some psychedelic use and meditation. But the teaching is to not engage in intoxicants, which might cloud the mind. I think sometimes we might think that certain substances even help our meditation or they help us relax or whatever it may be. But the Buddha's instruction and the instruction for lay people was to not engage in these things. And I think, as many of you know, I got sober back in 2010, so 15 years ago. And it is truly wild what we are capable of sitting through and being present with that we don't think I'll speak for myself, that I didn't think I was able to be present with. And I think that's the encouragement here a little bit, at least for me, as a recovered drug addict, is to be present with what's going on and have the mind kind of be sharp rather than doling it down. There's also, of course, the danger of when we engage in intoxicants, we might cause harm to ourselves or others. We might break the other precepts. Like if you are quite drunk, you might be more inclined to steal something or say something unkind just kind of impulsively, or use your sexual energy in a less useful way. So, those are the 5 precepts: to abstain from killing, take only what is freely given, speak truthfully, use sexual energy wisely, and not engage in intoxicants. Oh, and I'm already 20 some odd minutes in. I wanted to talk mostly about what we can do to actually practice these things. The the first thing, and the reason we went over the precepts, is commit to the precepts. You don't need to, you know, get a notebook and check down each day whether you followed it perfectly or not. But you might keep these precepts in mind throughout your day, or maybe at the beginning of the day. The truth is, as we kind of, I think, in practice with these precepts, right? Like engage with them, because it's not just a rule of like, yes or no, I did it or not, but really engage with them. It actually encourages mindfulness and compassion and insight. And as we shift our conduct or ethics to be a little bit more um, wholesome or supportive to well-being, it supports our mindfulness and our compassion and our well-being, of course. I used to there's a few people in my life who I've caused a lot of harm to. Family members, relationships in the past, just relationships, and relationships like intimate and otherwise, like a few friends that come to mind, or friendships I had. Uh, my mom, especially, my little sister, a few intimate partners, where I just caused an immense amount of harm at the time when I was like a teenager and whatnot. And there came a period, I think I've told this story on the podcast. There came a period in my meditation where it felt like every time I sat to meditate, this, I wouldn't even call it guilt, this like need to like reconcile it, or it kind of felt like I needed closure on it. And I was suffering. And I don't want to, I don't want to be the person, I don't want to imply that the discomfort I experienced was at all equal to or worse than the harm I caused other people in their experience. But I was experiencing this kind of, yeah, like a sense of guilt. It was just coming up quite frequently in meditation due to poor conduct. And at the time, I reached out to a new teacher, not a new, like they had been a teacher, but I reached out to a teacher that was new to me and said, hey, I would love to work together. I have something going on and whatnot. Great. We scheduled something. And I told them about it. And it was so helpful in both kind of processing it, in working with forgiveness and compassion, and how to respond to it, and in also understanding that that is one of the like karmic consequences of behaving like that. It feels better, going back to the story about surfing. It feels better to get out of the water and know that I met someone new. She was super nice. She cut me off a few times. I was not happy about it, but we're still ended like super friendly. We actually got along super well. That feels so much better and so much more supportive of both of our well-being than getting out of the water and thinking, oh, that idiot, or something like that. I had one recently where I may have told this on the podcast as well, where Elias, my older son, he's just turned 6. He asked me, I was sick. We were all sick. I was the last one to get it. It was like a cold or whatever, you know, nothing bad. Uh, but it felt horrible to me. But he asked me, we had done like bath time with our 2 kids, and then my partner Elizabeth was we switch off every night. So she sings and does the whole bedtime routine with one of them one night, and then the other one the other night, and I do the other. She was singing and doing her thing with Arlo, our other kid, and Eli asked me like, "Oh, you come build this Lego with me?" And I love Legos. Like, I'm an adult who loves Legos. I have 2 sitting here on my desk. Uh, and I was like, dude, I don't want to. I don't think I said it that bluntly, but I was like, oh, I can't tonight, dude. I'm like sick. I'm just going to lay down. And his face just dropped. And he was like, it's okay. I'll do it myself. He was like very supportive. I'll do it myself, daddy, or whatever. And then I sang to him and we did our whole bedtime routine, read books. And he went to bed. And like 2 hours later, I said to Elizabeth, I feel so guilty about that. And there's a line, right? There's a line of, as far as Sila goes, of like, no, sometimes I need to say no to something to take care of myself. That honestly wasn't one of them. I definitely could have done a Lego with him. I wasn't that sick. But I felt guilty. It didn't feel wholesome to me. This kind of recognizing that this is his childhood and I'm his dad, his father. I can suit up and show up to do a Lego with him for 15 minutes. So I tell these 2 stories just to illustrate that, like, when we're struggling with kind of some guilt or ruminating about something like that, it sometimes is because our ethics, our Sila, our actual conduct, right? Because Sila isn't just like a theoretical or abstract, my code of ethics. It's the actual conduct, the coordinating of bodily actions. It's active. My Sila was not in line with who I am or what I believe, which is to behave in a way that's conducive to the well-being of myself and others. And it can eat at us in big ways, like the harm I cause other people, or what I'll call a small way, the guilt I felt with my child. Ajahn Chah says, it's only natural that when we put on dirty clothes and our bodies are dirty, our minds too will feel uncomfortable and depressed. However, if we keep our bodies clean and wear clean, neat clothes, it makes our mind light and cheerful. So too, when morality is not kept, our bodily actions and speech are dirty. And this is a cause for making the mind unhappy, distressed, and heavy. Wholesome bodily actions and speech themselves depend on mind, properly trained, since mind orders body and speech. Therefore, we must continually practice by training our minds. We must continually practice by training our minds, right? We think of Sila as kind of training our actions, of learning to respond or speak or act in a different way. But it's the mind that often dictates what we do. Sometimes it's voluntary and willful or volitional, and sometimes it's autopilot or reaction. But we can train the mind as well as the body. So my first recommendation for working with Sila and investigating Sila is to commit to the precepts. Remember that they're not hard rules. You're not, in my opinion, in my experience, if you break a rule and, let's say, smash a scorpion that just stung you, it's not going to derail your whole life necessarily. But commit to the precepts. Notice where you don't follow the precepts, where you do something like that, or you lie, or you do like steal something, maybe something small. And notice how it feels. Notice how the guilt feels. Notice how maybe the craving or clinging that plays a role in it. Remember that we're training the mind here and heart, not just our actions. The other thing we might investigate is wise intention and checking with our intentions. Sometimes I go to say something, I realize, oh, that might not be useful or might be harmful. And one of the first questions I ask myself is, what's my intention here? And often in those moments, it's a conversation with like Elizabeth or something. Often my intention is, you know, something to do with like ego and being right and clinging. And very rarely a wholesome intention. I just had I'm in a group chat with some people and someone said something. This was like 2 weeks ago. And someone said something, they made like a homophobic joke. It's a group of like mostly guys. There's a few young women in it, bunch of friends that surf together. And someone made like a super homophobic joke. Uh, and I said something. I said, hey, there's no place for that in here. That's not okay, or something like that. But I thought about saying something for like an hour before I said it. Uh, because I didn't, the people pleasing or the wanting to get along or the whatever it may be, the kind of craving for approval. And actually, I talked to Elizabeth and I said, I really want to say something to this person. And she said, well, what's your intention in saying something? What's your intention in being quiet? And I said, oh, my intention in being quiet is to protect myself. And my intention in saying something is to let them know that nobody else, it's it's a group where no one really appreciated that. My intention in saying something is to let them know that no one appreciates that and it's not really welcome here, that kind of hurtful speech. So by checking in with intentions, you know, we sometimes can see what the right thing is to do, or we can see that maybe our intention isn't as wholesome as we think it is. I'm a big fan of journaling. I know it's not for everyone, but I think that was something that Enrique, that teacher, had me do, was to journal at the end of the day of where this kind of guilt came up, and not just with the harm I'd caused others, but like in daily life, where did I feel a sense of guilt or for something and how I behaved? It could be like something small. I had one today when I picked up my kids from school. We were driving back from school and there was someone like going to cross the street, but I was kind of like, by the time they got to the crosswalk and I saw them, they didn't just go, they were waiting. But if I stopped, I would have had to like slam on the brakes and there was a car behind me. So I went and I felt bad. It wasn't necessarily the wrong choice, but I felt bad. Journaling, we can kind of reflect on these things of like, was that the right thing to do or no? Or why did that not sit well? And sometimes by writing, we actually process information in a different way and can look at it anew. For me, the kind of journal prompt or the thought prompt, if it's not like a written journal, but more of like a mental inventory, is uh, where was my conduct wholesome or not today? Where have I caused myself regret or guilt? And then the other kind of more traditional ways to work with ethics are to practice metta or loving kindness. I don't know if there's anything I've done in my own life that has helped me with my Sila as much as the heart practices. Because as we continue to practice with metta or loving kindness, we have a natural like leaning towards the caring and well-being of others. Those reactions that voluntary or sometimes autopilot, the reactions become kinder. So my recommendation is to give loving kindness, metta, a real shot in your practice. And then to practice generosity. Generosity is a powerful way to practice Sila. And I'm not just talking money. Like when we talk about generosity, we often think of money. But with your time, with your energy, with your presence, be generous and give, not to the point that there's a middle way here, not to the point that we deplete ourselves too much, but just from moment to moment when we have the opportunity to be generous, be generous. It supports ourselves and others just so simply. And then my last one is to practice mindfulness. As Ajahn Chah says, we're called to train the mind, to work with the mind here. I haven't said it in a while, but I used to always say it when I taught, that I used to know I was angry when my fist was flying through a wall. Now I know I'm angry when I feel a little bit of tightness in my chest. Right? As we practice mindfulness, we get a little bit more clarity on when we're getting knocked off balance, when we are falling into reactions. We get more clarity on, oh man, like I often cause harm in this situation or that situation. I know that there's certain people or certain experiences where I tend to not have wonderful sila, where I tend to cause more harm with my actions and speech. Anytime I'm like anxious or stressed, anytime I have to do I don't know the word in English, like an errand. I don't know the word. Anytime I have to do an errand, like with the government here, like when we have to go get we just had to go get new passports, both U.S. and Mexican passports for the kids. And government offices stress me out for many reasons. It's not my native language. Regardless of the place or language, I don't love authority. Um, and I don't like being told no or feeling like I'm not in control. I get stressed. And often in those situations, when I'm told no or when there's a difficulty or a problem, I've never said anything like directly harmful or mean to someone, but I can get a little short with people and a little demanding. And my speech becomes unwise. So practice mindfulness. Know where your sila is wholesome and where it is not. By recognizing these pieces, we can work on it. Practice mindfulness to know in the moment, what does it feel like before you behave in a way that's harmful or not conducive? Is there a feeling that you can tune into that maybe gives you the heads up, hey, poor conduct is about to come? And then we can also know what works, right? So I'll end with an encouragement to check out the meditation challenge, onemindharma.com/challenge. But I'll end with this quote from Sylvia Boorstein. Every single act we do has the potential of causing pain. And every single thing we do has consequences that echo way beyond what we can imagine. It doesn't mean we shouldn't act. It means we should act carefully. Everything matters. It means we should act carefully. Everything matters. So not to be too tight with this, not to be take ourselves too seriously, but to remember that we should act carefully. By acting in a more wholesome way, we have the power to impact ourselves, others, and the world in ways that way beyond what we can imagine, as Sylvia Boorstein says. Thank you for your time today. I encourage you to go forth and practice.